How's it going, Jets fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Ryan Moran. And today we're going to discuss and react and analyze kind of the Jets win over the Steelers. Now, Ryan was saying before the podcast that he couldn't believe that the Jets mounted another comeback, down 20-10. And obviously, they made this pretty impressive return and comeback with Zach Wilson under center, his first game of the season. And we saw a lot of positives, some negatives, but we saw some good progression, right? This is all about progress, getting better, momentum, going into the deeper portions of the season and just seeing kind of the team come together. Obviously, the injuries at offensive tackle have been a little bit worrisome. Max Mitchell, was left the game a little bit prematurely, but he's expected to be okay, which is definitely a great sign. And hopefully, Dwayne Brown and George Fant can get back in a couple weeks. I think Fant, he's facing the IL, right? So he's out for the next 4 games. So
now the next 3.
Next 3 games. Okay, so you're out with him from a little while, but hopefully Dwayne Brown's getting a little healthier. But this team was resilient, man. This is kind of New York sports right now. We are extremely resilient. We are fighting. We are finding ways to win. And the Jets did just that, right? Like offensively, Zach Wilson had a couple of big moments. He had the interception, but otherwise, he looked aggressive. He looked comfortable, confident in the pocket. This was definitely a sign of progress, a very, very bright sign, at least at the end of the tunnel. There's a bright light at the end of the tunnel for Zach Wilson after a pretty solid first game to this season. But Ryan, what is your reaction, your impression of this win, and some key takeaways that you want to discuss?
It's a great feeling, just victory Mondays in general. I mean, it's been so hard for the Jets early in the season over the last couple of years, and to be 2-2 for the first time since 2017 is a really good feeling, I think, for all Jets fans this morning. And, really just keeping it simple to start. I mean, the team stats, basically split even across the board. When you look at time possession, the Jets had it for 29 minutes and 59 seconds. So basically even there, both teams were 100% in the red zone, punching it in for touchdowns. So that was basically, split across the board. You had each team converted 6 third downs. The Jets were 6 for 15, the Steelers 6 for 12. So again, it was pretty balanced. And even the penalties, the Jets had 7 for 64 yards, the Steelers 8 for 55. But the key difference in this game really was just the turnovers. The Jets got 4 interceptions. The Steelers had 2. So that made the difference to me in this game. And it really stems from the Jets defense finally putting together a 4-quarter performance that they can feel great about. And across the board, I think starting with the communication errors, which DJ Reed obviously spoke on after last week's frustrating loss, I think that was pretty evident. It was cleared up. And, the Jets really limited the Steelers. I mean, took away big plays. They had under 300 yards of offense, 297 in total. Steelers were held to 3.8 yards a carry. So the Jets across the board, the starting up front with the defensive line, you got a sack from the 3 headliners, Quinton Williams, Carl Lawson, Jermaine Johnson. You're seeing all those guys come on. Q has really been dominant this year. I think you're really starting to see Carl these last couple of games pick things up a little bit. JJ Sack was really nice, showed some of his speed, his athleticism, the power, the size, the length. On the second level, you had Quan Alexander fill in, and, he's really given some good things for a summer signing. And in the back end, the corner trio of the Jets continues to really be stout with Sauce and DJ on the outside. MC2 in the slot had his first interception yesterday. And then, the safeties and Jordan Whitehead and LaMarcus Joyner with 3 turnovers. I mean, Joyner had the 2 interceptions, obviously sealed it there at the end and, set up Whitehead on his interception, getting in good position on the go ball down the field that Pickett threw. So the Jets defense was the main phase that stepped up in this game and really gave him a chance to win. Obviously, you look at the offense, all eyes were going to be on Zach. And I think, most Jet fans will tell you they were happy with what they saw. It was not perfect by any means, but you saw a really fast start and a really fast finish. And I think throughout the ball game, which is really encouraging, is that Zach looked confident. He looked calm, poised, despite the 2 interceptions. And I think the first one he'd certainly love to have back. I mean, that's a swing that kept the Steelers in the game. I mean, the Jets had 3 points in their pocket, would have made it 13-3 going into half with the ball to start the third quarter. That interception and then Carl Lawson's penalty, which is a tough call, makes it a 10-6 game going into half. And the Jets really beat themselves. I mean, why were they down 20-10 in the fourth quarter, having to make another comeback on the road, late down 2 scores? I mean, they beat themselves. And, after the 10-0 lead they took in the second quarter, throughout the rest of the second into the third, they beat themselves. And, ultimately, though, when it mattered most, Zach stepped up. And I think the guys in that huddle could really look to him and feel good about him as their leader. And he made clutch throws. I mean, 10 of 12 in the fourth quarter, 5 for 5 on the final drive. Elijah Bear Tucker is a star, obviously having to fill in at left tackle, in a pinch this week. You just can't say enough about the grit of this team, and really happy that they got that win yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the one thing that really stood out to me, it was an individual kind of statistic. The most important quarter of any game is the fourth quarter. That's where things have to come together. And what really stood out to me was the Jets scoring 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. It wasn't just field goals. It wasn't just, just clawing their way back. They had 2 long drives to score touchdowns. One was 65, and the other was 81 yards. That's impressive to me. That first drive to bring it within 3 points, it was 17-20 after I think who scored there? It was Corey Davis pass from Zach Wilson. So like they went 81 yards. They marched down the field. They had a mixture of running the football, some bigger throws, some smaller throws. They even went backward a couple times. And Zach Wilson used his legs, scrambled a little bit on a 3rd and 13. And then they had a pass for 22 yards on 4th and 7. You're talking about a team that's showing resiliency in big moments. Zach Wilson, the clutch factor, right? That's what separates good from great quarterbacks, the clutch factor. Can you march down the field, convert on a 4th and 7, use your legs, find the right read, make the right play at the right moment. We've seen Brady do it. We've seen Rodgers do it. We've seen Russ do it. We've seen, even Justin Herbert and Mahomes and Josh Allen. Those are what separates good from great. Zach Wilson showed a spark of greats yesterday in the fourth quarter, really helping this team march down the field and score 2 touchdowns when it mattered most. And then, of course, you had some good production from your running backs. And you have Breece Hall, who's getting a little bit more involved lately. He had 66 yards on 17 carries, so almost averaging 4 yards a carry. We'll like that to be a little bit higher, but he's still easing his way in. Also had a touchdown, had long as 16. Michael Carter only had 9 carries for 15 yards. He was a little bit more involved in the passing game with 2 receptions for 14 yards, but Breece Hall also had 2 receptions. This was the Breece Hall show in the running game specifically. It's 17 carries, 19 overall touches. They really put a lot of faith in him. He's taking on a much bigger role right now, and this is pretty encouraging if you're a Jets fan, seeing, okay, this is our workhorse from Iowa, who is starting to really, or Iowa State, who's really starting to, gear up here and showcase that workhorse mentality. And Zach Wilson has a good running back to trust, especially in pass pro as well. He's a big guy, can do some stuff there. Defensively, CJ Mosley, he looks like he's back. 11 tackles. He had 5 solos and a pass defended. Franklin Myers had 7 tackles, as you mentioned before. They had a couple of sacks. LaMarcus Joyner had probably one of the best games we've seen in a very long time with those interceptions and 4 passes defended. That was really, really impressive. And then the sacks, of course, you have from Jermaine Johnson, Carl Lawson, and Quinnen Williams. So, those interior pass rushers really put a lot of pressure on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Don't have a really good quarterback situation. Kenny Pickett actually had a couple of decent throws, decent plays. It was 7 for 13, or rather 10 for 13 for 121 yards. He did have 3 interceptions, so not ideal for him. But he definitely has the small hands issue that people are always clamoring on about. The Jets, what I'd like to see the most of is just the resiliency. The fourth quarter, they showed up and they made big plays. They had big moments. Is there any individual performances that you were like, okay, like this is what we need moving forward? Specifically, I'm looking at LaMarcus Joyner. We need that version of LaMarcus Joyner every single game. He can't just show up occasionally. He's got to be reactive. He's got to be using that veteran experience, being in the right places. He just hasn't shown that the first 2 weeks of the season. He's been kind of all over the place, making the wrong reads, not a really good communication with the corners. But yesterday, he showed that he can actually provide some good, adequate performances late in his career. Anyone that stood out to you, they're like, okay, this is what we want to see moving forward.
Absolutely. I think you start just with the defensive unit as a whole. I mean, they in weeks 2 and 3 really struggled, and the team had been playing from behind early in those games, and it made things hard just across the board for the Jets. And I think the unit as a whole can feel good about that game yesterday, and now it's on them to really build as a defense from that game. I think taking it back to the offense, you obviously touched up on the yards per carry amount for Breece Hall and Michael Carter. I think, again, the main issue for the Jets offense right now is just playing from behind on schedule. I mean, 1st and 10, they just cannot, and it's not really Breece and Michael's fault either. I mean, there's just no room to run for these guys. I think they've really got to straighten things out. And, who were the headliners? Obviously, Breece offensively. I mean, putting the game on his shoulders, just his 4th NFL game. I mean, you're seeing the superstar potential this 21-year-old rookie has. The speed that he has is very evident, making plays as a receiver. They put the game on his shoulders late, with some big time carries there in the fourth quarter, and he delivered, obviously with that game-winning touchdown, getting the ball across like he did. Corey Davis, I think, is really an unsung hero and just a very underappreciated player on this football team. You talk about a guy with that size, and he's really called upon to go over the middle on the intermediate level, really make the tough grabs, and he did so yesterday. I mean, I feel like all of his grabs were really some solid routes, on the 1 4th down, I want to say it was on one of the final 2 drives. I mean, it was a really good route. And you see the tough grabs that he can make going over the middle. I think Elijah Barrett-Tucker is another one of those stars, as I spoke on earlier. The versatility that this guy has is just making him that much more valuable to this team. And finally, I think, give Conor McDermott and Nate Herbig credit for filling in on the right side. Herbig, we knew, was a really quality backup when the Jets signed him. And I think that was part of the reason the Jets moved AVT to left tackle this week, was because they knew the strength of their depth was really on the interior with all the offensive tackle injuries. So that was a really good job by the Jets coaching staff of getting creative. And, McDermott, I mean, look, you know what he is, but he really minimized the mistakes yesterday. I think there were maybe 2 or 3 off the top of my head. And, that's pretty good. I mean, week 3, it was pretty tough when he had to go in for Fant. The last player I wanted to speak on, and I think all Jet fans were really happy to see this yesterday, was for the first time, Bryce Huff was finally active. And on 9 snaps, he had 3 pressures. I mean, he helped on one of the first sacks that I think Quinnen had. I mean, he was generating pressure when he was in, and this is a gifted young pass rusher with speed, with bend, with all the traits that you look for. And he's got to continue to be on. He was inactive the first 3 games of the season. I mean, the fan base was calling for him, and he showed out yesterday, and he should continue to be active for this team on game day. So those are really a few of the players. I mean, you saw Elijah Moore, Tyler Conklin, and Garrett Wilson all create some splash plays for this passing game yesterday, which was good. I think once the Jets can straighten out that 1st and 10 ground game, you're really going to see this thing balance out offensively, and they're going to be able to really keep guys in rhythm throughout the game. And that's going to be key. And once this team, the special teams yesterday missed an opportunity to pick up a muff punt. So when they really get all 3 phases in sync, which haven't been the case at this point, and Zach Wilson can minimize the mistakes, the inaccuracies, the bad decisions, and you see the, potential that he has in the big play threat. I mean, the escapability was on display early in this one yesterday. This Jets team, when they get in sync, can really, do something special.
Yeah, absolutely. And another guy I want to discuss is Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner had himself a day yesterday. PFF just tweeted out that he, on 7 targets, he allowed 2 catches for 9 yards, 1 forced incompletion, and a 39.6 passer rating allowed. I mean, if you're a Jets fan and you have a rookie cornerback who looks like the second coming of Darrelle Revis right now, that's a very optimistic take. I'm not saying he is, but having that lockdown guy opposite DJ Reed, there's a lot of optimism there. He's a rookie. You have 4 more years of Sauce Gardner, and you have DJ Reed under contract as well. Jordan Whitehead, obviously, is probably about an average strong safety. Maybe you address free safety in free agency next year, or you draft someone. There's a lot to like about this Jets defense right now. The defensive line obviously has a lot of great talent with Quinnen, John Franklin Myers, Carl Lawson under contract as well. And like you said, Bryce Huff and Michael Carter II in the slot, in the nickel spot. So there's a lot to like. This team has good talent. It really just comes down to coaching, momentum, and execution. I think right now the defense is making some good progress. I think they're showcasing some of the strengths that we labeled before the season even began. But now it comes down to the offense, really, and Zach Wilson's development and growth. We wanted him to be active the last couple of weeks to really get in the groove of the season. But now, luckily, he's back. He got through his first game healthy, which is all we could ask for. And he's making some good progress now, and hopefully can continue to mount that and continue to compound the success. But this is definitely a team that still has a little bit of holes. There is some vulnerabilities, but winning cures all at the end of the day. The Jets are 2-2 right now. This is definitely a team that is competitive. They're 3rd in the AFC East. They have to play the Dolphins next week. I doubt Tua is going to be playing after that concussion scare. I guess that leaves Teddy Bridgewater as their starting quarterback. He's not that good. The Jets can beat Teddy Bridgewater. You just got to stop Sauce. This is going to be a really good matchup if they have Sauce Gardner on Tyreek Hill. You know what I mean? If they have Sauce on Tyreek Hill, if they DJ Reed on Tyreek Hill, we'll see kind of how they match that up, what they do there to mitigate that. But the safety help over the top, that's what I'm most concerned of. LaMarcus Joyner is not a very fast player. Hill is going to kill him downfield, but Teddy Bridgewater doesn't have the best arm in the world. He did have a pretty nice pass last week. It was like 60-yard pass, so he can get the ball downfield if he has time, but he's not as good as Tua. Tua has started the year, obviously, on a pretty high note. But then you have the Packers and then the Broncos, Patriots, who definitely gave the Packers a run for their money yesterday. And then you have the Bills. So the Jets have a very difficult schedule coming up. This is not going to be an easy gauntlet of teams to face off against, but it's all about building momentum and winning. You got to be disciplined. You got to have to execute well. No mistakes. You can't beat yourself. I think that's kind of the thing that Jets fans are most used to, is just the team beating themselves and shooting themselves in the foot. Now it's just about execution, discipline, and not doing that exactly. So hopefully they can provide a little bit more. But Ryan, any other last thoughts before we wrap here?
I think one point I forgot to mention before was that, Mike LaFleur finally stuck. I mean, and it wasn't his fault the first 3 weeks of the season. I mean, they were playing from behind. And like I said, the Jets have got to straighten out their ground game on 1st and 10. But I think it was a good thing to see LaFleur really stick to his guns and continue to run the football, even though it really wasn't all too efficient. I think he did a good job of, sticking with it. And he found something with he got both Hall and Carter on the field together throughout the game, which was nice to see. And he did a good job of getting kind of like some RPO action. And I think that's really what eased Zach in the fourth quarter was just, really freezing the linebackers and getting opportunities over the middle for Conklin and Corey, like we saw. And I think LaFleur, he deserves credit. I think he, it's never perfect and it's hard when, you're averaging what the Jets were on the ground yesterday, but he did a good job, I think, and deserves credit along with, Robert Saleh. You got to give it up to him. I mean, this team now twice has just fought until the finish when things could not look any worse. They found a way to win 2 games here. And now look, it's going to be on this team to, as a young group, really string wins together. And they're going at home against a division opponent next week. And this is a time for the Jets to really start to string some wins together. I think that's, for this team, like I said, to be 2-2 for the first time in 5 years. How do they take that next step? It's going to, like, they obviously, dropped an opportunity against the Bengals a week ago. Now it's on them to really turn the tide, change the narrative in that sense, and start to put some wins together.
Absolutely. But guys, would love to hear reactions, your thoughts on this win. We have definitely a gauntlet of games coming up here, but Zach Wilson showed us a sign of life, a sliver of hope for his future and what could be a very bright one if he continues compounding on his success. So always happy to hear perspectives below in the YouTube comments. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Jets episode.